Hello everyone and welcome back to another video on the channel. Today I am reviewing The Invisible Man, which is another remake of the original, Universal horror monsters that they had back in the day, and this is a brand new modern take on The Invisible Man, and I've never seen anything about The Invisible Man. The closest I've seen is Adam Driver in Marriage Story, which that is incredible that's the reference I'm making for this video. But this movie is starring Elisabeth Moss, directed by Leigh Whannell, who did the Insidious movies, or at least I think he wrote them. I think he directed the third one, and he also directed Upgrade, which is a massively underrated movie. That movie's awesome. I don't think it's a great movie, but I think this movie is a great movie. This is a knockout of the park and a complete win for Leigh Whannell, which I found out that this movie is coming off of a $7 million budget, which, in perspective, it sounds like a lot, but compared to Avengers Endgame, which had like a $358 million budget, which is just ridiculously overkill, this movie has a very small budget. It has a very, very, smaller cast. It doesn't have a big name. Elisabeth Moss is a pretty big name, or at least she should be after this movie, because she is awesome in this role, and what I really loved about this movie is all because of her. She has a very powerful character, and it's really a story about a woman that is trying to get out of this abusive relationship. And if you take out the aspect of the horror and the fact that it's about the Invisible Man, and you just have this woman who just escaped from a terribly abusive relationship, right? And she has all the trauma from that and all the bad things that happen, all the weight on her shoulders, and her, afraid to walk outside and to step outside into the world and to be vulnerable to anybody again. And her character and her character arc in this movie is so good. And Elisabeth Moss, you see her in Us in a very small role, but you can see she plays crazy very well, because throughout this entire movie, she is convinced that this guy, I think his name was Adrian, is following her invisible. And, obviously nobody's really believing her. Some people have like the benefit of the doubt, like, we know you went through this hard thing, and, if you let this guy haunt you, that's what's going to get you. Like, they think that it's all in her head, and maybe it is for a while, but the power of this movie is through her performance, and that she is incredible. When she needs to be crazy, she is nuts, and she just gives an excellent performance from beginning to end. And the opening scene, now let me say, her performance, especially in the opening scene, is very telling, because you can show a lot by just showing what the characters are doing through their actions rather than saying what happened to them. Because you see her trying to escape this house, because this guy lives in a mansion. He is rich. He has all the money in the world, and he has this super high security and just really open house. And she's trying to sneak out of this place. She's trying to be very quiet, and how terrified she is by making the littlest of noises. And you just see through her actions, like, this is a terrible relationship. You don't see what he does to her. You kind of hear a little bit, but from the opening scene alone, you know exactly how bad this relationship has been and how desperate she is. And as for being a horror movie, Leigh Whannell does an excellent job helming this movie. And the camera work, let me just say, the camera work of just following a character that you can't see, is that's what they do. I believe if I were to be making this movie, right, and I see how they did it, and I've seen the movie, I think they might have had a stand-in walk or stand where the Invisible Man is at certain scenes, at certain times, and how the camera kind of follows him versus following the people that you think the camera would normally follow. Like, the camera pans before the actual group starts moving, because it's following the Invisible Man. It's following this guy that you can't see. And there's shots where the camera's moving through the hallway, and you know where this guy is when Elisabeth Moss is looking around everywhere, and she just can't find him. And I think this could have very easily slipped into a very silly aspect, because when she's fighting nothing, it looks kind of ridiculous. You take the sound design out of it, it is absurd. But the way that it's done, and the sound design, and how everything came together, and the editing, and the direction from Leigh Whannell, it is very intense. This is a very suspenseful, psychological thriller for the most part. And when it hits the horror, there were a couple times where I jumped, a couple times that it really got me. And as for the trailer, because when I first saw the trailer, I thought it showed way too much. I think there are a couple shots I wish weren't in the trailer. And there's a couple of shots that are in the trailer that are not even in the movie. So I don't think that it showed too much, because, you think the movie's coming up to an end, and then it takes one more step. And I think that one more step and how the movie ends and the final shot is kind of interesting to think about, and you kind of contemplate what it really means for the characters in that scene, and it just puts a different perspective, a different twist on this idea and this story. And I love this movie. I think in terms of negatives, my only things would be, there's a couple times where some of the supporting characters, something happens with them where they kind of turn against Elisabeth Moss, but it's one small thing that happens and they're immediately off her side. And I don't think that they would abandon her that easily. There's a couple of script conveniences like that, but I think for the most part, this is a very, very solidly written script by Leigh Whannell as well as directed. It is an excellent performance by Elisabeth Moss, and I think the supporting cast is also great. Everybody in this movie did a excellent, it's so good. This movie's so good. Check it out. $7 million budget. It's going to make its money back easily, but I just want, go see this movie. Everybody go see this movie. If you like horror, go see it. If you like psychological thrillers, definitely go see it. This is an excellent movie. Check it out. Thanks guys for watching, and I hope to see you all in my next review.